Hi everybody, JJ with Experiences My Dog, and today we're going to be looking at something I think pretty interesting. That's this guy right here. These are dog treats by Amazon, not just from Amazon, but actually by Amazon. This is actually from their in-house Solimo brand, and this is specifically going to be dog treats for your dog. So let's find out if these are actually worth you checking out and actually giving to your dog. In terms of the actual treat itself, they do manufacture two specific protein versions. They have a chicken version and then they have a duck version. To supplement both these different types of proteins, they also offer a sweet potato version, which is the one that we're taking a look at. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a closer look at the actual treat package itself. So in terms of the treat package, you can see it comes in a bag, pretty straightforward. It's 2 pounds, and I think probably for a lot of people that's going to be the thing that's going to be most compelling to them. It seems like a whole lot of treats. Right now on Amazon, it's priced at under $20. It's $18, $17.99, and yes, of course, it's Amazon, so it qualifies for Prime free shipping. In terms of the actual ingredient composition, this is where things are actually going to get a little bit more interesting. But before we get into that, let's first just finish talking about, of course, sourcing and ultimately production. So Amazon makes no qualms about it. It's directly there on the product page. This is not a product that is actually sourced or manufactured in the United States. This is sourced and produced in China. So definitely, if you have concerns there, and there are sometimes valid concerns as to sourcing and production when it comes to animal-based proteins coming out of China. That is something to be conscientious of. So if that is a factor for you, you definitely want to be aware of that first and foremost. But beyond that, Amazon does openly communicate on the product page that they are working directly with their co-packer or their producer for these treats to make sure that they're adhering to, of course, safe and ethical and clean production processes. The challenge I think you have with that, though, is that, of course, these different types of production processes and I think standards that exist for not only sourcing but also for production vary, of course, globally all throughout the world, and different countries have different essentially standards and practices, and they don't actually make any statements with any type of information that you yourself can kind of corroborate and find out exactly what is going on in terms of that sourcing and production. So you really have to feel confident in that. I definitely do think, though, that Amazon, of course, has taken that in mind, and I think that they are committed to ensuring a certain class of experience in terms of this production and ultimately having their consumers hopefully be confident. And that's reaffirmed by that they say that they have pretty much a no questions asked return. So if you have any problems with it, pretty much you can return it and get your money back for the product. Now, that being noted, we are going to talk a little bit more about transparency and how they kind of responded to our inquiry to find out about more information about the ingredients. And I think that's probably going to be the main thing that we're going to be talking about now, is going to be the ingredients for these dog treats. Okay, so now let's get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty here, and we're going to talk about the ingredients. Now, for a lot of the actual people that have reviewed this product, I saw that they were very impressed by the limited number of ingredients that were utilized. To me, it's not just a limited ingredient. Limited ingredients in itself, of course, can generally be a positive indicator, especially if you kind of have dogs that have allergies. You might not necessarily want to have a huge amount of ingredients that could add complications or have your dog have maybe sensitivity or allergic reactions. But also sometimes having tons of really good ingredients can be a very good thing. So it's not necessarily always, I think, advantageous to have a limited number of ingredients. I think it's much more about the quality and the specific ingredients that are utilized. And I definitely think that here I can definitely tell you that there is at least one red flag ingredient that I'm concerned with. So let's go ahead and talk about what we have here. Again, remember that these treats do come in two different varying proteins. You either have duck or you have chicken. Now, neither one, the primary ingredient is not the animal-based protein. That means that your dog is not getting chicken or duck as the predominant item that's inside this treat. They are definitely going to be eating more sweet potato. Now, sweet potato does have some inherent nutritional benefits, but definitely I think I'm always a fan of giving your dog, let's say, a animal-based protein. That being said, I definitely still give my dogs, different types of biscuits and cookies and things along those lines, but definitely in a far lower value than I would be giving them an animal-based protein. Now, for these treats, the first ingredient is sweet potato. Your second ingredient is going to be chicken. And then your third ingredient is going to be pea protein. Now, the pea protein is a very interesting choice. There shouldn't be any real reason for them to have actually had to add pea protein. Sometimes manufacturers do this to kind kind of increase the protein percentage on the package, so that if you as kind of a consumer for your dog are kind of evaluating different types of things, going, okay, I maybe want to get the one that has more protein for my dog, their number has gone higher. Now this could be an indicator that it's kind of really hard to know exactly how much chicken you have on all these kind of individual sweet potato pieces. I can tell you it doesn't really seem like there's that much chicken on here. You definitely seem like you're getting a lot more of sweet potato. And if you talk about kind of value proposition, where your money's going, regardless this is low cost, I'd much rather have my $20 going to a lot more chicken than anything else. And definitely I don't think that's necessarily the case here. It's also not necessarily clear how the processing occurs. If you're actually maybe getting like reformed, or are they taking kind of like a sweet potato extract and then kind of combining that together with the pea protein, and then you're kind of getting an extruded kind of sweet potato, because it does look a little bit different than what I would say traditionally I've seen when you have kind of cut and either air dried or dehydrated strips of sweet potato. It looks kind of a little bit more kind of like almost gelatinous, or like it's formed. I can't say that with certainty, and I can definitely tell you that when we did reach out to Amazon, we didn't get more information in this regard, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit once we get to our transparency. Now I will say that from research, what we do know is that from a pea protein perspective, there isn't generally any overall immediate negative aspects in terms of your dog ingesting this over a sustained period of time. So I'm not necessarily concerned in its inclusion because of this. It's much more just a general marker that usually it means that the company might be kind of trying to balance out the overall cost of production to be lower, so they don't necessarily have to give you as much of, let's say, the more costly ingredient, which in this situation I would say would be chicken. Now the next ingredient is what I would definitely call my red flag ingredient, and that's going to be glycerin. So why is glycerin part of my red flag warning? It's a little bit complicated, and definitely you want to take a little bit of time and I think really pay attention to this part here in the video. Glycerin is a complicated item, but to kind of break things down, hopefully in a clear and easy way for you, first and foremost, you generally have two types of glycerin that can be added in generally into something like a dog treat. You have vegetable glycerin, which can be naturally derived, and then you generally have non-naturally derived glycerin, and it's generally a byproduct that comes out of either soap production or it can actually come out of petroleum production. And if it definitely comes out of petroleum production, there's actually quite a number of negatives that can be present within that glycerin, including things like menthol and many other elements which we know are documented in terms of causing issues. But why would you, let's say, add this glycerin into the dog treat in the first place? Well, it's a natural sweetener because it's actually a sugar alcohol. Now, this won't necessarily be glycemic in terms of actually increasing sugar levels within your dog, so where you'd have to have concerns in that regard, but it generally is done as a sweetener to be able to kind of appetize the dog. So sometimes people will go like, man, my dog loves this kind of dog treat as compared to this really expensive dog treat. Well, they might have this glycerin in there, and that's actually what's really driving kind of the appetite for that dog to be super interested in there. It also can be used as a binder, which can be useful in kind of situations like this where you're trying to kind of bind one thing to another and kind of keep its form or keep its shape. So that's another reason why it's present. It can also be used as a form of retaining moisture because it actually will kind of absorb and pull moisture to that object. The challenge though that you have though is that there can actually be negative effects that occur to your dog, I'd say in terms of their physiology, their biology because of this. So when your actually dog ingests too much of this glycerin, it can actually pull water into their colon, and this colon can actually cause them to get cramping. It can get them actually have irritation in their actual bowels. It can cause them to become diuretic. They can get kind of upset stomachs. They can have a lot of different variable aspects which aren't necessarily positive because of the use of glycerin. This is why I'd say companies that focus on higher quality ingredients or more naturally sourced production actually will not use glycerin. Either they'll use, like I said, that vegetable glycerin, or they'll actually use things like molasses or honey or natural elements that help to provide, I'd say, like I said, that binding or to help to provide palatability to the dog treat. So definitely there are concerns with the use of glycerin. And the other point that I would make to this is that by the ordering that you would have in terms of the weight of the actual product, it is a little bit concerning that even though this is a limited ingredient set, that literally our fourth ingredient is glycerin. So you have to think that the amount of glycerin that is being digested is fairly high. And this is actually also part of the reasons why I think calorically the calorie composition is actually quite high on there because of the actual addition to this. So it's definitely something that I'm not a fan of seeing within this. Now, in our transparency aspect, we did actually reach out to Amazon to have actually further questions on, their sourcing, their production, why they used glycerin, why they used pea protein, if they could actually clarify, is it a vegetable glycerin? Or if it's not a vegetable glycerin, how is it derived? And I can definitely tell you that we were able to make contact with them on their phone support very quickly. And they took down our questions and they said that we actually would get you a follow-up phone call and a follow-up email, which is what I requested. And at this point, I have actually received neither one of those. So sad to say that while immediate reaching out to them was able to be done easily and effectively, we haven't had any actual follow-up from Amazon in this regard. So it is just something to keep in mind. And this is also, I think, a fundamental difference that you're going to have compared to other I'd say like just exclusive manufacturers of pet treats and pet foods, where actually when we talk about a little bit of our kind of value comparison, other companies that we reached out to, like a Full Moon Dog or a Heart for Paws, who also produce some treats that we actually kind of just give you some compare and contrast for, both got back to us within 24 hours and gave us a full range of confirmation on all the points that we were asking about in terms of kind of sourcing, production, and other aspects of your treats. And so last but not least, now that we've covered, of course, all the concerns about glycerin, you also have salt, which necessarily isn't always, I think, the greatest thing to see added into a treat, but I'm not necessarily opposed to. Recapping, we've got sweet potato, we've got chicken, we've got pea protein, glycerin, and salt. Now, one other aspect in terms of the overall kind of production of this is going to be that this actually does make a very clear statement that this is a radiation treated. So a radiation treatment is actually something that is actually fully certified and sanctioned by actually a number of global organizations, including the United States, and in terms of the CDC Center, as well as the World Health Organization. And it's actually something that's commonly actually done to food in hospitals, and that the reason being is because people with weakened immune systems, you don't actually want them to be able to almost get any type of bacteria, which could cause them to get sick again. Now, why would quote-unquote the food be irradiated? Well, as part of maybe Amazon's kind of ensuring that this is produced, of course, in China, and they want to make sure that the food meets a certain standard in terms of not having potentially anything that hazardous could make your dog sick. It goes through an irradiation process. Now, while I don't have any immediate qualms about irradiation, because I do think that there's actually far more enough documented kind of studies to show that it's something that has merits in terms of ensuring the cleanliness of foods. I think the main negative that it would have in terms of, let's say, giving a food or a treat to your dog that has been irradiated is that it has been documented to lower the nutritional density. So a food that is not irradiated versus one that is irradiated, the one that isn't irradiated is actually going to be more nutritionally dense. So you're going to be essentially giving something that has more vitamins, more minerals, more benefits to your dog. Now, of course, you would want to ensure that that product has been produced in a clean, processed fashion, so that, of course, you don't have to worry about that. But there's tons of treats on the market that are literally not irradiated that would then be able to provide that richer level of nutrition. So now that we've talked about the ingredients, let's actually talk about the treats themselves. So getting into the bag is pretty straightforward. It's got an easy tear design, had no issues there. It actually was pretty easy to open. As I'm sure many of you have experienced, sometimes it can be a little more challenging to open and reseal different bags. The resealable design here worked well, no issues in that regard. Now, actually taking a look at the treats itself, the smell was a little bit interesting. Sometimes when I've gotten, I think, more I'd say more kind of fresh or natural based treats, I can really kind of make out the smells more distinctively. Here it did seem kind of like I smelled kind of sweet potato, but it definitely did kind of have a different kind of strong smell to it. But looking at the treats themselves, I definitely didn't see any signs of like mold or kind of like weird sliminess or ickiness or nothing like that. So overall, the treats look entirely fine in that respect. So no issues in terms of the production. They all seemed okay. Taking a closer look, the sizing actually though really varies though. So while you're getting 2 pounds quote unquote within this, I think first and foremost the size of the treats really vary. So I had treats that literally were as small as something like 2 inches, and then ones that were all the way up to almost 4.5 inches, or maybe a little bit more than that. On top of that, there were definitely ones that were kind of stuck together. So I think that makes it a little bit more challenging. Sometimes I like having a little bit more consistency in my treat size in terms of just knowing that that's how much I want to be able to give my dog, and I can kind of keep that in my treat pouch or keep that in a jar or whatever I'm going to be doing. If you want to be more consistent here, you could kind of want to make sure to maybe cut some pieces or kind of like chop them and kind of make them more consistent. And then adding to that is that having ones that are kind of stuck together, I think also is a little bit kind of tricky, because you're going to have to kind of take them apart, and then sometimes they're not really that binded or wrapped that well, and so some pieces of kind of chicken just fall off the sweet potato, and then you can end up with pieces that are just sweet potato with no chicken. And that gets back to my original point, where I think when you talk about how much chicken is in here, there's not really, I think, that much chicken. There were quite a number of pieces that when you look at it, you seem like you're really getting a lot more sweet potato than you're getting to chicken. Even on some of those bigger pieces, sometimes you were getting the same amount of overall chicken on one that was 4.5 inches as compared to one that was 2 inches. So next up, we've got the taste test. So this is always interesting. Of course, you know, some dogs are totally like some stuff, some dogs don't like some stuff, and you know, some dogs are so food motivated, it doesn't really actually matter almost what you give them, they're going to take it. And so this is really where it's so important for you to really kind of be the arbiter of defining really what you want to be able to give your dog in terms of ensuring that they're getting something good. But while I'm not necessarily a personal fan of this, I think overall kind of ingredient composition, the sourcing, and some of the other elements into this, I did feel comfortable enough to go ahead and at least test it out with my dogs and just see kind of how they responded. I just wanted to see, you know, how long it took them to kind of chew through some of these compared to some of the other sweet potato treats that we've given to them, or kind of chicken treats that we've also given to them. And overall it was pretty straightforward. Modoc, as I expected, pretty much just ate these without even kind of flinching about it. Bowie, you know, she chewed on a bit, and definitely these tend to have a little bit more kind of, I'd say like a firm, very firm, but somewhat softish texture to them. So it does require them to kind of chew on it a bit more, and then they have that little bit of chicken that's there that also causes a little bit of chewing. So it's not something that necessarily your dog's just going to kind of immediately be able to ingest unless they're a much larger dog. You know, if you've probably got dogs in that 60, 80 to 100 pound class, then definitely kind of you just giving one of these dogs, they could just maybe kind of lightly just munch on it, and then they would just end up just ingesting the entire treat. But I definitely actually think for smaller dogs, it would actually take them a bit of time to kind of work through it. Ultron initially was a little bit kind of like not that excited about the treat, and then he kind of went back to it and eventually finished it. Overall, I've only given them a very small amount, but overall, they definitely have seemed to initially be appetized from it. And based, I definitely think on the reviews that people have posted online, overall there's been far more of a positive experience from people saying as far as how interested or excited their dogs have been to these treats. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about value and overall kind of comparison to some other options that are out there in the marketplace. So again, we've got this guy here, 2 pounds, $18, I think is going to be the big driver for a lot of people. For me though, I think definitely the focus always when we talk about giving our dogs treats or giving them food or giving them, you know, something that's part of kind of supplementing their diet, I'm always want to focus maybe more on high quality than necessarily quantity, especially because the reality is for many dogs out there, they're actually overweight. So I think actually reducing their caloric intake and also making sure that what they're given is of much higher quality with less artificial ingredients is always going to be beneficial to them. So some examples that we got here, we've got a Heart for Paws. This is actually one of the only actually options that are available on Amazon where it's actually sweet potato chicken that is sourced in the United States and produced in the United States. This is from a small little company in Idaho that does actually local sourcing in terms of their actually sweet potato as well as the chicken. It's 13 ounces. They literally make it fresh, so this is outstanding, so you get the highest level of nutritional density available to you. 13 ounces for about, I think, $12 or $13. And they were extremely transparent. I was able to email them, and within 24 hours, they gave me a response to everything. And definitely, as you'll be able to kind of see in some of the shots that we'll show you here closer up, when we compare the two, there's a noticeable difference in terms of the sweet potato and the amount of chicken that you get in this compared to what you get in the Solimo. Now, if we take a look at another one right here, this is from Full Moon Dog. You can get these on Amazon. You can also get these from a lot of other places. I really love them. They're a great job in terms of their sourcing and their production. So these are US sourced and US produced. On top of that, they're actually fully certified organic, which is really important in terms of giving a higher quality of care to the actual chickens themselves. The ingredient composition is, I think, done really well as well here, just to kind of give you a comparison. While this, of course, does not have sweet potato in here, just for contrast, because there are some companies that also use glycerin. They don't use glycerin. They have used some other items to be able to kind of supplement what you would generally have by adding in glycerin. So you've got organic chicken, organic cane sugar, which of course is that driver to be able to create more palatability to it, because your dog's going to, of course, love that sugar. Then they do use an organic ground rice as a kind of a mixture there in terms of a binder. And that does offset a little bit that you're not necessarily giving your dog exclusively 100% chicken, but still, it's still it's reasonable in terms of, I think, of the quantity that you're getting within here. Organic flaxseed, which flaxseed, while it's a little bit less immediately biodiversible to get some omega-3s, you actually do get some omega-3s from there. Salt, organic vinegar, which is partially there as kind of a preservative, and then organic dried culture skim milk, and then hickory smoke liver. So overall, you can see this is, I believe, 16 ounces for $12. So, you know, ultimately the choice is up to you in terms of what you think is the better value proposition between these and then what you would have from the Solimo chicken and sweet potato treats. So wrapping things up, we've talked about a lot of different aspects for these Solimo dog treats from Amazon, and hopefully you've been able to find enough information in this review to figure out whether or not they're the right choice for you. Now, if we kind of take the high level perspective in terms of these treats and we take a look at the feedback from literally the thousands of people that have reviewed it on Amazon, it's generally been positive. The vast majority of people have said that they like these treats, their dogs enjoy them, and they haven't had any problems. The one thing I will note, though, is that if you take a look at the other end of the spectrum and the people that did generally leave negative reviews, they generally are more aligned with usually being related to something that I would say was induced by the use of glycerin that's in this dog treat. These were things like diarrhea, vomiting, their dog being sick. And so this is generally symptomatic of some type of kind of, I'd say, glycerin being present in the treat. Now, it's hard to know whether or not maybe that would have ever happened if they didn't get such a high volume of the treat. And it's hard to know. Maybe these people just gave their dogs too many of this treat. But I think there were also a couple of reviews that I read, and I literally read through hundreds of these reviews where people said that I only gave them like one or two and they still had these symptoms. So it's a little bit difficult to know, and of course there's so many other variables that could be in play. But that being noted, I think if you talk about the relative value, if you consider some of the other treats that we talked about, there's definitely many other choices that even if you're looking for treats that are clearly underneath $20 or even under $15, with the two that I noted being under $15, that you can get some great quality treats for your dog that don't use any type of glycerin. So with that, you know, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, make sure to go ahead and drop it in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to go ahead and get back to you guys when I can. If you're interested in making sure to stay tuned to more videos that we have coming up here, whether they're hands-on reviews or whatever they might be, make sure to hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell. And you can also make sure to go ahead and follow us on our different social media channels, which are linked in the description below, including Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So with that, as always, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to spay and neuter your dogs.